Hello, Doctor. Thank you very much. What is the advantage of the new policy?
Well, two pillars of government policy are the fiscal policy, which is underwritten by the Council of Ministers and the Council of Representatives, the House of Representatives. This involves the budget and the taxation issues. The other economic pillar is the monetary policy. And monetary policy is basically the remit of the National Bank of Ethiopia. So the fact that the National Bank now is coming up with several edicts in terms of, one, having foreign banks to come and operate in Ethiopia, and number two, the foundation of the capital markets in Ethiopia, which is going to have to raise credit and capital for the private sector. The financial policy changes are very important pedestal for transforming Ethiopia into a growth economy. Ethiopia is one of the frontier economies now. So to move into what you would call into a kind of a middle-class society, we need to have these financial policies in place. The important thing now is the birr has been rigged to different kinds of devaluations since 1991 as the government changed. And of course, the earlier assumption is that the agreement that we had during the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, which set the dollar as an international currency, was supposed to be supported by the gold reserves of the United States. In 1970s, President Nixon said that the gold we have is not going to match the amount of currency we have in circulation in terms of US dollars. So what he did is that he floated the American dollar against other currencies and took it out of the gold standard. So all other currencies had to find a way of matching themselves to this international US currency. So now, what we see, the periodic devaluations that we had, for me, they are ideologically motivated, because whether you call it socialism, revolutionary democracy, or developmental state, these are leftist thoughts which would disagree with neoliberal forms of growth. But the problem we have is with the fall of the Soviet Union, neoliberalism has taken over the entire globe, especially with the foundation of the enlargement of the globalization process. And therefore, what we see is countries, communist countries like China, which are run by communist parties, Vietnam run by communist party. These are now the fastest economies in the world, the biggest economies in the world. China, in terms of purchasing power parity, is the richest country in the world. In terms of GDP, is the number 2 next to the United States. So China joined the WTO in 2001, and these are the reforms that China undertook to attract investors. So technically, China became the workshop of the world. The Western companies went into producing China using its massive and educated labor force. Now, if you tell me China is not neoliberal, I think it would be a laughing stock. China is more liberal, laissez-faire economy than the United States, actually. So now, our country is going to benefit from this a lot. Of course, our country had lots of achievements in terms of infrastructure development. I remember the Financial Times has said 2010, 2020, Ethiopia was the fastest growing economy in the world. So even now, growing at 7% per annum, which is the IMF, World Bank government figure, this is huge amount of growth in terms of GDP. But if you look at the Human Development Report produced by the government and by the United Nations Development Program, we're way below in number 70 or something. So this will have fundamental effect in transforming Ethiopian business, the Ethiopian private sector, the international foreign direct investment, and of course the movement of foreign currency into the country, either through investment. Even if you take the diaspora income in Ethiopia now, Cairo and Abuja are getting more than $30 billion from their diaspora because of correct financial policy. I don't think we get that amount in Ethiopia. But at least Ethiopia would get between 12 to 15 billion dollars a year from the diaspora if we have proper exchange rates that match between the black market and the official rates. So that's why we're floating the currency. So floating the currency means now the diaspora can send their money through the banks instead of through illegal means, which is subject to all kinds of irregularities and, of course, criminal activities. As you heard, the Ethiopian government has come now with a law which says that it's going to go back 10 years to investigate how monies have been transferred into this country. So it's going to, I hope this policy is going to repair all these things, bring in foreign direct investment, encourage foreign banks to come and operate in a big way, finance our mineral industry that's going to grow up, and finance our agro industry.
Can you tell me the other countries' experience for the devaluation's advantage?
Yeah, well, for example, take our neighboring countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. These are countries that have followed the flexible exchange rates, floating exchange rates. So in Kenya, I remember at one time I used to exchange $1 for 40 shillings. Now last week, it went, about 2 weeks ago, it went to 180. But the National Bank was able, through the currency manipulations, to bring it down to 120 by releasing dollars into the market, by releasing euro into the market. So that's going to be the most important work of the regulatory agency, which is the National Bank of Ethiopia. Uganda is the same thing. At one time during the structural adjustment programs, I remember currencies in Ghana, I remember at one time we had to have a real big bag to go to a restaurant with the Ghanaian money, the cedi. I mean, it became so cheap, but I don't think we'll go into that situation in this country. Given the fact that the National Bank now becomes very vigilant in its activity, government agencies become vigilant in their activity, money laundering agencies become vigilant with their activity, banks become truthful to their work in this country, then we'll not go into this kind of situation. Other countries, we have bad examples. Zimbabwe was a bad example. But that was when President Mugabe interfered, killed private business, especially the foreigners. He started taking away their farms and everything. Then the country went into a spin, literally into a free fall. Other countries, Egypt has improved its currency adjustments. Now it has received $10 billion from the IMF. So Egypt is trying to stabilize its economy now. It was a real serious problem. Nigeria, President Tinubu came and liberalized the exchange rate. Of course, initially, the dollar went up to $1,600 naira, but eventually it's going down. This is the kind of gestation phase you need between the policy and actual implementation of the process. The problem with Nigeria is they have plenty of foreign currency. I've worked 3 years as heading a UN agency there. And the problem is, like at one time, they lost $20 billion from the bank. And President Buhari came in a ticket to say, I'm going to find you the $20 billion if you elect me. He was there for 2 terms, he didn't find it. So it's corruption and mismanagement that's killing it. So that's why I was really undergirding the fact that this needs very strong government commitment to fight corruption, to enforce the law, and of course, to bring peace and security to the country.
So what is the challenge of the government to implement this policy in our country?
The government should have any challenge in this. I'm sure the government knows better than I do, but the point is, now the fact is that, number one, you have to have the right people in the right place. Frankly, most of the professional bodies in government has to be run by people who have the experience. I remember in 2008, when we had the global financial crisis, the UK Central Bank, like our National Bank of Ethiopia, they said, how do we stabilize the UK economy and the world economy? Because London, the city, is where every currency exchange used to take place before Brexit. And they said, let's try to announce the governor's position globally, because this is a skill that we're looking for. It's not a political appointment. So they did that. Mind you, the British are the guys who created finance. They created economics. Every name that's associated with the creation of the finance, business ideas are the Brits. But finally, a Canadian guy, Mark Carney, Dr. Mark Carney, he won the position and he led the British Central Bank. So our government should bring in, if necessary, diaspora Ethiopians or even people from India and Pakistan, who have plenty of people with great experience. Another example, the US Federal Reserve Chairman, he's not even from the finance sector, but the guy, he was running financial business for a long period of time. So that experience is required if you're going to run big government institutions, development institutions. I think the Ethiopian government has an opportunity to bring in young, motivated, energized, and people with the kind of experience that is needed to run the different development organizations in Ethiopia.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Finally, I will give you a chance to give suggestions for peoples and the government for in this policy and other new things.
Yeah, I think the most important thing now is, the district, the Warada is the most important stage of government administration. This is the unit that connects the Ethiopian people with the Ethiopian government, literally. That's where all things happen in terms of investment. We call it health, education, mining, irrigation, agricultural development, industrial parks. They are all within a Warada. And our Warada administrators need to have the requisite skills to be able to manage the combination of different outputs of this economic sectors to be able to create what you call sustainable development. And therefore, it's very important for the Waradas to be informed with people who have the skills in terms of public administration, development management. I remember when I used to teach at Addis Ababa University, we had more than 325 graduates in public administration and development management at the master's and PhD level. I wonder if these kids are going and working in the Warada. No, they're working with NGOs or they're teaching in the universities. These are the people you need in the Warada to support the elected people in the Warada. These are the people who are going to encourage investment, be it domestic or foreign investment. These are the people who can understand foreign investors so that they don't start work and then they just go away. Because the danger is you can have a lot of non-performing loans within the banks, even if you have foreign investors coming, because investors don't come to any country with the dollar sticking out of their breast pocket. They come with ideas, they use the banks, they use their experience, they use their collateral to be able to develop certain areas of the economy. And therefore, the improvement in the Warada administration in terms of the skills of the Warada administrators is very important. It's not only for economic development, but also for peace and security and law enforcement. The Warada administration is a key part in any part of Ethiopia, and I think the government has to look into this very seriously.
Thank you very much to give this interview for your time.
Good, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.